بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds. May Allah's praise and peace be upon our Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and all his family and companions. As for what precedes, knowledge is the foundation of human civilization, and it is what distinguishes man from all other creatures. Through it, a person rises and aspires to the highest ranks, and achieves happiness and contentment in his life. Islam has encouraged knowledge and learning. And Allah the Almighty says, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. That Allah will raise those in ranks who have believed and are given knowledge. And the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, said, مَنْ سَلَكَ طَرِيقًا يلتمس فيه علما سهل الله له طريقا إلى الجنة. رواه مسلم. That whosoever takes a path upon which to obtain knowledge, then Allah makes the path to paradise easy for him. Narrated by Muslim. Reading is the first step to knowledge. It opens the doors of knowledge, and through it, a Muslim learns his religion from the Qur'an and the Sunnah. And reading helps to understand them correctly. The first command that came with the Qur'an was read. And Allah the Almighty says, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Read in the name of your Lord who created. For reading to be useful and beneficial, it must be based on a comprehensive, easy, and accessible approach, taking into account individual differences among students, whilst helping them to acquire correct reading skills, consolidate them, master them, and learn to read in a short period. Many scholars have written books on teaching reading for beginners. And one of the most important and unique books in this field is the book Al-Qā'idah, Al-Madaniyyah, Teaching Arabic Reading for Beginners, by its author, Sheikh Dr. Abdul Muhsin bin Muhammad Al-Qasim, Imam and Khatib in the Prophet's Honorable Masjid, and the General Supervisor for the classes in the Noble Qur'an and Islamic texts in the Prophet's Masjid. May Allah preserve him and protect him. Ameen. In these 3 days, we will study this book and explain the method of teaching it and the rules and principles it includes by Allah's permission. O Allah, make it easy for us in teaching this book and guide us to what pleases you. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, respected viewers from around the world, I welcome you all to this blessed course, being presented from the esteemed and honorable Masjid an-Nabawi, the Prophet's Masjid. This book, Al-Qā'idah al-Madaniyyah, is comprised of an introduction, an opening, and 13 consecutive chapters. As for the introduction, the author starts by listing his methodology of his book, and then the unique features and virtues of this book. Then, he highlights some of the aims and objectives that the students will accomplish after the study of this book, by Allah's permission. As for the opening, then this is directed towards the teacher, in which the author clarifies the shape of every letter, its name, and its sound, which will assist in understanding the progressive step-by-step sequence the book follows. For example, in chapter 1, the student is only encouraged to learn the shapes and the names of the letters, whereas starting from chapter 2 to the very end of the book, the student is asked to pronounce the letters depending on the vowels found on it, i.e., the sound. My methodology in the book. As for the methodology of this book, the author clarifies this under the title Methodology in the book as follows. The author built this book on a knowledge-based foundation, relying on the books of the Arabic language, and he included in the book all the principles that a student needs. He placed a foreword before the lessons about the shapes, names, and sounds of the letters, and he divided the book into 13 chapters, most of which have various sub-lessons. The author, may Allah preserve him, also made sure to use a logical sequence and step-by-step learning while organizing the book. He also linked the lessons together so the student can recollect what was studied previously. He also made sure to set learning goals for the student to accomplish in each chapter. And he specified what the teacher needs in the beginning of every chapter, such as the reading method and other than that. He also placed a summarized method for teaching reading. My respected viewers, the author also separated some of the chapters and lessons for some of the reading principles because of their importance of perfecting them. For example, we have the lesson on the glottal stop, i.e. the hamza. Because of its importance, and because it doesn't appear except after the weak letters or with them for the most part. He also separated a lesson on the long hamza, and this is due to the combination of two hamzas or a hamza and an alif. We also have the short alif, due to its shape resembling that of the ya. The author also separated the lesson on hamzatul qat' and hamzatul wasl and at-ta al-marbuta and the lunar and solar lamps in order to perfect that which is similar in writing but different in pronunciation. Likewise, my respected viewers, the natural elongation. And this is because how common it is in the Arabic language, as well as the learner's need to know and perfect it. Furthermore, the alif that appears after the waw indicating the masculine plural pronoun, and this is because the alif is not pronounced. He also separated the lesson on the terms of the Quranic script and wrote their examples using the Quranic script so that the student can read the noble Qur'an without confusing it with what he learned from the other reading principles. And he also made sure to bring in a separate lesson the numbers from 1 to 20 so that the student can read single-worded and double-worded numbers. Amongst the methodology in this book is that he also divided the chapter entitled Reading Words into 5 lessons, starting with 2 words all the way up to 4 words, then a sentence, then passages containing multiple sentences. Furthermore, he started the lessons with the fatha, followed by the kasra, and finally the dhamma. And this is because the fatha is considered to be the lightest of the vowels, followed by the kasra, and then he mentioned the sukoon after them. He also limited the examples in the chapter entitled Letters with Vowels and the Absence of Vowels, i.e. sukoon, to 3 letters. And from chapters 2 through to 5, he included the letters of the Arabic alphabet in their various forms, followed by examples. And he also wrote all the words with their vowels and wrote the nunation, i.e. the fathatan, above the alif. My respected viewers, he also limited the examples to words from the Qur'an and the prophetic Sunnah because they are the foundation of the Arabic language. And he was very careful to choose examples that are easy to read and understand and have clear meanings. In the chapter entitled Reading Words, he was careful to choose examples that are inclusive of the foundations of the religion, proper etiquette, and good character, so that the student can combine between knowledge and cultivation. Until chapter 5, the author ordered the intended letter in the examples alphabetically. After that, the order is either before the intended letter or after it. And he started with the Hamza in chapters 2 and 3. And he has avoided repeating words in the examples used so that the student can read a variety of words. He also separated the letters and examples in tables and distinguished between their rows using 2 colors, white and green. And he distinguished between the intended words and vowels in the lessons using the color red. He also prepared an audio recording of the letters and words in the book, so the student can achieve the skill of listening and reading correctly. And finally, alongside this book, he authored another book specifically for writing and entitled it Al-Qā'idah, Al-Madaniyyah, Teaching Writing for Beginners, so that the student can combine the skills of reading and writing. We now move to the features of Al-Qā'idah Al-Madaniyyah. Among these features are that the book is academically grounded in the books of Arabic language, and it is inclusive of all the principles of reading. Simplicity and ease in learning to read has been applied, and a progressive step-by-step methodology in learning to read. Amongst the features is that this book allows the student to read and to perfect reading in a very short time, and its examples are from the Noble Qur'an and the prophetic Sunnah. The examples are also simple and clear, and they are non-redundant examples. The examples in the chapter entitled Reading Words are inclusive of the foundations of the religion and good character. It is accompanied by an audio recording that helps with listening and reading correctly. And it's also followed by a separate book for writing using the same examples. My respected viewers, we now move to the objectives of Al-Qā'idah Al-Madaniyyah, and they come as follows. These objectives, my respected viewers, have been outlined here mainly in general terms by the author. They are then listed in detail in every chapter, as will be seen throughout our study of this book by Allah's permission. Upon finishing the book, with Allah's permission, the student will be able to identify the letters of the alphabet and their shapes, read the letters of the alphabet and their shapes correctly, identify vowels and the absence of vowels, i.e. sukoon, to read letters with vowels and absence of vowels correctly, to identify nunation known as tanween, to also perfect reading letters that are nunated, i.e. have a tanween, to also identify letters with double consonants and vowels. With the permission of Allah, the student will also be able to read letters with double consonants and vowels correctly, and identify nunated letters with double consonants. Read nunated letters with double consonants correctly. Differentiate between the pronunciation of Hamzatul Qat' and Hamzatul Wasl and their writing, and identify the letters of natural elongation. To also identify the alif that appears after the masculine plural pronoun. They will also be able to, with Allah's permission, perfect reading at-ta al-marbuta when joining and when stopping on it. Read the lunar and solar lambs correctly. Perfect reading words, sentences, and passages correctly. To read the Noble Qur'an with the terms of the Uthmani script. And to also perfect reading numbers correctly. We now move to the introduction for the teacher. After this, my respected viewers, the author highlights and brings an opening guide for the teacher. This introduction for the teacher is of utmost importance for the teacher in assisting in understanding and acknowledging the progressive step-by-step sequence of this book, as we mentioned earlier. The author clarifies here, my respected viewers, that for every letter in the Arabic alphabet, it has a shape. i.e., a unique shape that is drawn when writing. Also, a unique name that it is known as. And finally, a unique sound that is read when pronouncing it. For example, the letter ba. Its shape is as seen in this form here. And its name is like this, ba. As for its sound, it is ba. If it has a fatha vowel above it, or b. If it has a kasra vowel under it, or bu. If it has a dhamma vowel above it, as we will come to know in this course by Allah's permission. Likewise, the same applies for the letters ta, tha, jim, and all the remaining letters of the Arabic alphabet. As for the letter alif, its shape is as we see here, and its unique name is alif. As for its sound, my respected viewers, because it is an elongation letter, the alif is considered a vowel-less letter. This means that its sound is not apparent except when it is read with a letter with a fatha vowel before it. For example, when we say ba, the elongation sound that is found between the pronunciation of the ba and the hamza at the very end of the letter, this is the sound of the alif. I'd like to remind you, my honorable viewers, that this information is to assist the teacher when teaching this book. And with that, we have come to the end of the introduction. And we will now have about a 3-minute break and proceed on to the very first chapter of this book, Al-Qā'idah, Al-Madaniyyah, in which my colleague, Sheikh Dr. Muhammad Al-Hassan, will present it with Allah's permission.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. I would like to thank my brother Sheikh Muhammad Sadiq for the introduction, and I ask Allah to reward him. And now we will continue with chapter 1. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds. And may blessings and peace be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and upon his family and all his companions. Greetings and a warm welcome to the very first chapter of the book Al-Qā'idah, Al-Madaniyyah, teaching Arabic reading for beginners. In this section, it's important to draw attention to some key points. First, to seek help from Allah the Almighty and ask Him sincerely for aid and success, whilst renewing our intentions in all our actions and devoting them purely to Allah alone. Ultimately, this is so that our actions become successful, blessed, and honorable in the sight of Allah. Second, it's highly recommended to read and pay careful attention to the teacher's guide that is found at the beginning of each chapter of this book. This is because it contains an explanation of how to teach the specific chapter accordingly, whilst giving valuable information that will benefit both the teacher and the student. Third, it's important for the student and the teacher to pay attention to the chapter titles and the lesson subtitles in this book. This is because of their importance in linking the skills and knowledge the students gain throughout the learning journey. Fourth, the student should sit directly in front of the teacher whilst reciting, so that the teacher can observe the student's mouth to make sure the letters' correct exit points and characteristics are applied. This will allow the teacher to clearly identify what needs to be corrected and improved. Fifth, the student should always place his finger under the letter or word being read, contemplate, and then read it according to how the student hears it from the teacher. Sixth, the student should be moderate whilst reciting and avoid speeding or reciting very slowly. Seventh, in all the lessons that come under chapter 1, the student is encouraged to familiarize themselves with the shape of the letters and mention their name rather than sound. Eighth, the student's errors should be evaluated and corrected according to the nature of the error, Is the error a result of a basic lack of understanding of a ruling and therefore can be overcome through training and practice? Or is the error a result of a disability? If it is a disability, the teacher will either ask the student to continue whilst not forgetting to revisit the error at a later time, or stop and address the mistake and help the student correct this mistake to the best degree. 9th, constant review and repetition should be implemented by the teacher and the student. Whenever a student completes a group of short lessons or chapters, the student is asked to review previous lessons. This will allow the information to be routed further. 10th, the teacher is highly encouraged to broaden the review process and how it's performed. For example, sometimes the teacher starts from the beginning of the lesson to the end, or does the opposite, or moves between the lines asking questions. This is to prevent boredom and increase the different ways of learning. By Allah's will, this will result in a higher quality of learning whilst rooting what has previously been learned firmly. My brothers and sisters, let's start with chapter 1. Chapter 1, the alphabet. Upon finishing this chapter, with Allah's permission, the student will be able to identify the letters of the Arabic alphabet, read the letters of the Arabic alphabet correctly, identify the shapes of the letters of the Arabic alphabet, read the letters of the Arabic alphabet in their various forms. Identify and read the Hamza in its various forms. Identify and read the long Hamza, i.e. الهمزة الممدودة. Identify and read the short alif, i.e. الألف المقصورة. Chapter 1, the alphabet. Lesson 1, letters of the alphabet. Alif, Ba, Ta, Tha, Jim, Ha, Kha, Dal, ذال, راء, زاي, سين, شين صاد ضاد طاء ظاء عين غين فاء قاف كاف لام ميم نون هاء واو ياء. My brothers and sisters, it's essential we draw close attention to matters such as the following. The teacher must be diligent in observing the student as they pronounce the letters to ensure they are being pronounced correctly from their articulation points, whilst also adhering to the letters' unique characteristics that are specific to them. Certain letters that require extra care include the letter Alif. This letter is read by ensuring that the lam in the word Alif is pronounced with a kasra and not with a sukun. Secondly, when pronouncing the names of the Arabic letters that end with a hamza sakina, it's important to make sure that the sound of the hamza sakina is heard clearly at the end of each letter's pronunciation, such as ba, ta, ثاء حاء خاء طاء ظاء فاء هاء. And lastly, we have the letter Ya. These are to be read moderately without exaggeration or complete neglection of the hamza sakina at the end. We also have the three letters Tha, Dhal, and Dha. These three letters can only be pronounced by making sure that the tip of the tongue is brought out slightly. Otherwise, they can be confused with other letters such as Sin and Zai. Ultimately, this is learnt and understood by directly copying the teacher's pronunciation. Similarly, the letter Ha should not be confused with the letter Ha. Also, the letter Zai should be read as Zai and not Za or Za. As for the letter Dad, it is important to avoid bringing out the tip of the tongue when pronouncing it. We also have the two letters Ba and Wa. It's commonly noted that some students read them like this: Ba and Wa. And this is not in line to what is correct, as mentioned above. The correct way of reading the names of these two letters is like this: Ta and Wa. We also have the two letters Ain and Ghain, which are read like this: Ain and Ghain. It's important to clarify the presence of the letter Ya that is found within the pronunciation of the names of these two letters. We also have the two letters Kaf and Lam. It is vital that these two letters are pronounced in a thin manner, Kaf and Lam, and not by thickening and fattening them. Similarly, all the other letters are to be observed with this caution, so no letter is given a characteristic that it does not have or deserve. And lastly, we have the letter Ya. As for the letter Ya, since it comes at the very end of the lesson, some students pronounce it in a fast manner, without considering its correct articulation and characteristic. Therefore, moderation in its pronunciation should be always followed, just like all the other Arabic letters. Shapes of the letters of the alphabet. Lesson 2. Shapes of the letters of the alphabet. In this lesson, the student reads the same of the letters and not In this lesson, the student reads the name of the letters and not the sound as mentioned previously. The student repeats the same letter the number of times they are written in their different forms in this book. This lesson includes all the possible shapes that each letter of the alphabet can appear in. The student is encouraged to contemplate the shape of the letter every time he pronounces it during the reading phase. The student is not required to mention where the letter is found in each word. Rather, it's simply enough for the student to contemplate the shape of the letter and read its name. This lesson should not be taken lightly on the basis that is a repetition of the previous lesson. Indeed, depending on the student's understanding of the different letters shapes during this phase, it will make it easier for the student to recognize the letter in the future when the student begins spelling words and sentences. Let's start Lesson 2. Shapes of the letters of the alphabet. It's spelled like this. Alif, 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 Alif. باء 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 تاء 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 ثاء 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 ثاء. And if we move to the left slide, for example, let's take the letter Kha. It's spelled like this. Kha, 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 Kha. My brothers and sisters, we note here, we read the letters across and not down, as we done previously. Let's take more examples. We have the letter Dal. It's spelled like this. Dal, 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 Dal. And if we move to the last line here, we have the letter Zai. Zai, 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 Zai. And if we move to the left box, let's take the letter Sheen. Sheen, 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 Sheen. And here, let's take the letter Ta. It's spelled like this. Ta, 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 Ta. And now let's take the letter Ghain. It's spelled like this. Ghain, 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 Ghain. And lastly, let's take the letter Ya at the very end of the left box. It's spelled like this. يا 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 and so on and so forth. Now let's move to lesson 3. The Hamza. This lesson covering the Hamza has been singled out in a separate lesson, as the author clearly pointed out in the initial stages of this book. The first reason for this is because there is a dispute between whether the Hamza is a letter or a vowel. Secondly, to clarify the various forms the Hamza may appear in. As you see in here, there is a subheading in this lesson, and the student must read the main heading of the lesson and the subheading. Similar lessons with subheadings need to also be read throughout the book. The student places his finger under each shape and says Hamza without having to mention the position of the letter in the word or the way it has been written, i.e., whether the Hamza has been written independently or on the alif, waw, or ya. Let's start. The lesson is spelled like this. Lesson 3. The Hamza. Shapes of the Hamza. 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 Now let's move to lesson 4. The long Hamza. The origin of the long Hamza is a Hamza followed by an alif, and it has been shortened in this form that you see now, and it is read by saying Hamzatun mamduda. The student avoids saying because this is the sound of the letter, not its name. Let's start. It's spelled like this. Lesson 4. The long Hamza. Shapes of the long Hamza. And we can say shapes of the elongated Hamza. Shapes of the elongated Hamza or shapes of the long Hamza. The same thing. Hamzatun mamduda. Hamzatun mamduda. Now let's move to lesson 5. The short alif. This letter has also been singled out to an independent lesson because it resembles the shape of the letter ya in writing, but without dots under it. However, in reality, its sound resembles the sound of the letter alif and does the same job exact as the alif. Let's start. The lesson is spelled like this. Lesson 5. The short alif. Shapes of the short alif. ألف مقصورة. ألف مقصورة. My brothers and sisters, and now we have come to the end of this chapter. Let's have a short break, about 3 minutes. We will then have my brother, Sheikh Muhammad Sadiq, to continue from the next chapter, if Allah wills. Thanks.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. May Allah reward my brother and colleague, Sheikh Dr. Muhammad Al-Hassan, for his presentation. And now we shall continue with Allah's permission on chapter 2. Chapter 2. Letters with vowels and the absence of vowels. Upon finishing this chapter, with Allah's permission, the student will be able to identify the vowels and the absence of vowels, read letters that have vowels and sukoon correctly. Starting from this chapter onwards, the student will read the letters according to their sounds, depending on the vowels on it, i.e. fatha, kasra, or dhamma. Here are some important matters that are worth noting. Firstly, we can see each example in this lesson appear in squares, and the principle states that each square is to be read separately without reading two or more squares together. Now, let's start with the permission of Allah. So we start by putting our finger on the heading. The student is also asked to place his finger on the heading and say, Chapter 2, Letters with Vowels and the Absence of Vowels. Lesson 1. The Fatha. A, Ba, Ta, Tha, Ja, Ha, Kha, Da, Dha, Ra, Za, Sa, Sha, Sa, Dha, Ta, Dha, A, Gha, Fa, Qa, Ka, La, Ma, Na, Ha, Wa, Ya, and so on and so forth. Here, my respected viewers, it's worth mentioning some important points. Firstly, when the student is pronouncing the letters with vowels, they need to make sure the letters are read moderately, avoiding making their duration too long or too short. For example, here we can see a hamza with a fatha vowel on it. So the student would read it like this and say a, and avoid elongation here by saying, for example, and so on and so forth with the remaining letters. Ultimately, this is to be understood and learnt directly from the teacher. Likewise, the student must also observe the correct exit points and the characteristics specific to the letters during their pronunciation. The teacher is expected to observe the student here so that this is fulfilled. For example, when pronouncing the letter dad, the student is to pronounce it like this, da, by placing one of the two sides of the tongue with what is in line with the upper palate of the mouth, as is known by the experts in the field of at-tajweed, i.e., the student avoids bringing out the tip of the tongue so that this letter is not confused with the letter dha. Again, we remind ourselves that this is to be understood and learnt directly from the teacher. Also, my respected viewers, I remind you that we can find a barcode sign on the electronic copy and also the printed book on every page. Using any appropriate device, the student will be able to listen to an audio recording that will help the student to listen to this lesson correctly and, by the permission of Allah, be accompanied throughout this lesson by a virtual teacher. Now we move to the examples of the fatha. It is pronounced and spelt as follows. Examples of the fatha: a, kha, akha, kha, akha, ذا, أخذ. The second example is read as follows: ba, ba, sa, basa, ba, sa, basa, ta, basata. If we move to the next box, my respected viewers, and start from the third line, the word khatama, it is spelled as follows: kha, kha, ta, khata, kha, ta, khata, ma, khatama. If we take the very last example, the word dakhala, it is spelled like this: da, da, kha, دا خا دا خا دا خا لا دخل and so on and so forth. To take some more examples, the word ذهب, it is spelled as follows. ذا ها ذها ذا ها ذها با ذهب. If we take the word رفع, the second line here, را فا رفع را فا رفع رفع. If we take the very last word, the word نزل, it is spelled as follows. نا زا نزا نا زا نزا لا نزل, and so on and so forth. My respected viewers, as heard, every square is to be read separately during pronunciation. Some of the common mistakes is when the student reads, for example, the word أخذ. So the student starts by reading the first square and says then moves to the second square and says خا, i.e., the student skips the first letter in the second box, and this is contrary to what is correct. The correct way, my dear brothers and sisters, is that when the student moves to the second square, he starts again and repeats the spelling of the hamza, then the kha, then combines them both. Then, when the student moves to the third square, the spelling begins from the very beginning again, starting with the hamza, then the kha, then combining them both, and then moving to the third letter, and then combining the complete example, and so on and so forth. I'd like to remind you, my respected viewers, that all these details are found in the teacher's guide, that it's found at the start of every chapter. So it's highly recommended, as mentioned by my colleague, Sheikh Dr. Muhammad Al-Hassan, for the teacher to return to this guide and to take inspiration from it when appropriate. Another point worth mentioning is to observe the student to ensure he or she doesn't read the letters and squares fast, as this could lead to overlapping of letters or skipping steps when spelling the letters. Let's now move to lesson 2. It is read like this. Lesson 2. The كسرة. E B T Th G حي خي دي ذي ري زي سي شي صي ضي طي ضي عي غي في قي كي لي مي ني هي وي ye, and so on and so forth. Our respected viewers, based on a formative question that came from one of the viewers, I'd like to clarify the difference between the letter ضاد and the letter ظا. If we go back, here to lesson 1 of the Fatha, the way we would pronounce this letter here would be ضا. The way we would pronounce this letter here would be by saying ظا. If we'll continue, my respected viewers, to the examples of the kasra. It is read as follows. Examples of the kasra. Ya, ya, I, ya, I, ya, I, ya, I, sa, ya, isa. If we take the word ajida, it is spelled as follows. A, A, G, أجي, A, G, أجي, دا, أجد. If we go to the next box, take the example the word شرب. شا شا ري شاري شا ري شاري با شرب. If we take the very last example, the word نسي, it is spelled as follows: نا نا سي نسي نا سي نسي يا نسي, and so on and so forth. If we take some more examples, the word خاطفة, it is spelled as follows: خا خا طي خاطي خا طي خاطي فا خاطفة. If we take the very last example, the word شهد, شا شا هي شهي شا هي شهي دا شهد, and so on and so forth. My respected viewers, in order to make it easier for the student, the letter or parts related to the required skill has been colored in red, as we see here. We can see that the kasra letter in this example is the letter sheen, so it has been colored in red, and so on in similar lessons. My honorable brothers and sisters, we now move to the third lesson. Lesson 3, the Dhamma. It is read like this: U, Bu, Tu, Thu, Ju, Hu, Khu, Du, Dhu, Bu, Zu, Su, Shu, Su, Bu, Tu, Dhu, U, غو فو قو كو. Again. كو لو. Apologies. We start from the letter مو. نو. هو. وو. you, and so on and so forth. When reading any letter that has any vowel on it, whether it's a fatha, kasra, or dhamma, it is important for the teacher to observe the student's mouth while pronouncing the letter. For example, when pronouncing the fatha, it is important for the student to open his mouth enough in a way that is appropriate to the sound of fatha. And when the letter is a dhamma, the student should press the lips forward in a way that is appropriate to the sound of dhamma. And lastly, if the letter has a kasra, the student needs to make sure that the lower jaw lowers slightly backwards in a way that is appropriate to the kasra. By Allah's will, this will help and facilitate in pronouncing the sound of the letter with the corresponding vowel. If we move on to the examples of dhamma, the way to read this is similar to the previous lessons we took in the fatha and kasra examples. It is read like this. Examples of the dhamma. Ka, ka, bu, kabu, ka, bu, kabu, ra, kabura. If we take the very last example, the word aduda, it is as follows. A, a, du, adu, a, du, adu, da, aduda. If we take the example, the word طُبِعَ, it's spelled as this. طُ, طُ, بي, طُبِي, طُ, بي, طُبِي, ع, طُبِعَ, and so on and so forth. We swiftly move to lesson 4, the sukoon. My respected viewers, this lesson is one of the most important skills in this section. Therefore, it is important for the teacher to give it as much time and effort that is needed. One of the most important principles here that needs to be anchored into the mind of the student is that it is not permissible to begin on a letter with a sukoon vowel, but rather it must be linked to the nearest vowel before it. Because of this, we can see here that this lesson shows letters that consists of 2 letters rather than 1, so that the letter with a sukoon can be successfully pronounced. Let's start and take some examples. Lesson 4. The sukoon. Ba, ba, أ أب أ أت أ أث, and so on and so forth. In the sense that the student pronounces the vowel first separately and then repeats the pronunciation of the vowel together with the next letter with the sukoon. Additionally, among the important rules that is worth pay attention to here is that the student must be careful not to provide a vowel-like sound when stopping on the letter with the sukoon, i.e., not to give any letter an attribute that it does not have or deserve. We repeat that this is to be understood and taken directly from the teacher. The student should also avoid reading fast when pronouncing the sukoon, as it can lead to mixing of letters and steps. Therefore, it is recommended to leave at least about a second between each step at minimum, as we have done momentarily. My respected viewers, the aim here is not for the student to read extremely slowly, but rather for the student to read moderately. Let's move to the examples of the sukoon. It is read as follows. Examples of the sukoon. Ba, 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 sa, ba'sa. If we take the very next example, sa, sab, sa, sab, a, sab'a. If we take the very last example, the word batasha, apologies, it is read as follows. Ba, batal, ba, batal, sha, batasha, and so on and so forth. If we take one more example, our respected viewers, the word ghaybu, here in the second box, it is pronounced as follows. Gha, ghay, gha, ghay, bu, ghaybu, and so on and so forth. With this, my respected viewers, we have now completed the tutorial of chapter 2 in this book. And it is worth reminding ourselves that it is important for the teacher to spend all the required time in any chapter and not to skip it until the teacher feels the lesson has been learnt and understood. I also remind you once again of the barcode link that can be found at the top page of any book to accompany the student during his reading. We now move to chapter 3, letters with lunation. Upon finishing this chapter, with Allah's permission, the student will be able to identify lunation and perfect reading lunated letters. Tanween, my respected viewers, is an extra noon with a sukoon that is attached to the end of a noun. This tanween is heard when read continuously. However, it is not heard nor written when it is stopped on. What is required in this lesson is for the student to contemplate the letter of the alphabet with the tanween, then pronounce it with the correct vowel on it. Now let's start. Chapter 3, Letters with Nunation. Lesson 1, the Fathatan. An, ban, tan, than, jan, حن خن دن ذن رن زن سن شن صن ضن طن ظن عن غن فن قن, and so on and so forth. My respected viewers, it is important to note here that the student must be careful not to add an extra nasal sound when pronouncing the tanween letter. For example, what would be wrong is to say here, for example, an. Likewise, the pronunciation of the tanween is not broken down to two separate syllables, but rather it is pronounced continuously, as we have done momentarily. So we would say an, ban, and so on and so forth. This rule is to be applied in all the lessons of this chapter. Let's move to examples of the fathatan. Examples of the fathatan. If we take the first word, the word عِنَبًا, it is spelled as follows. عِ, na, عِنَ, ban, عِنَبًا. If we move down to the third line and take this word here, the word أذن, it is spelled as follows. A, then, أذن. If you move to the next box and take the word آنفا, it is spelled as follows. Ni, آني, فن, آنفا. Amongst the important words in this lesson that requires careful attention is the word adhan. And this is because this word ends with a short alif, alif maqsura, rather than the common alif. However, it is important to clarify that the short alif is treated and read in the same exact way as the common alif. The second important word in this lesson is the word آنفا. This is because this word is made up of a elongated hamzah, hamzatun mamduda. This is the first time that the elongated hamzah comes as an example, and the student may not be familiar with it. Therefore, it is important to clarify its sound. It's recited as with a duration of 2 syllables. Furthermore, it is to be pronounced continuously without being separated. We swiftly move to lesson 2, the kasratan. It is read as follows. In, bin, tin, thin, jin, حين, خن دن ذن رن زن سن شن صن, and so on and so forth. If we move to the examples of the kasratan, we take the word shay'in. It is pronounced as follows: sha, shay, in, shay'in. If we take this word here, the word qawmin, we say qa, qaw, min, qawmin, and so on and so forth. We move to lesson 3. Lesson 3, the dhammatan. Un, bun, tun, thun, jun, hun, khun, dun, dhun, run, zun, sun, shun, and so on and so forth. If we move to the examples of the dhammatan, we take the first example, the word kutubun. It is spelled as follows: ku, tu, kutu, bun, kutubun. If we move to the very last word, the word wahyun, it is spelled as follows: wa, wah, yun, wahyun, and so on and so forth. Our respected viewers, this brings us to the end of chapter 3. And it also brings us to the end of the first day of this course, with Allah's permission. I'd like to give you some reminders, my respected viewers. There will appear a link in the chat or the description. Please click on it and confirm your attendance in order to achieve a certificate of participation upon completion and an ijaza, permission to teach. My respected viewers, you will need to confirm your attendance at the end of every day of this course. May Allah reward you for attending and listening, and we shall see you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.